Well, the kids had a little, what they called a phono viewer. I think that's what it was called. And it was a neat little machine that looked like a TV, but it had a turntable and a slide thing you put in. And then in the little screen, why you could see the slides. So they had a lot of different stories that they listened to, and one of them was about George A. Custah. And this was a very interesting sort of thing because it was told with a kind of an indefinable accent and very cultured. He was young for a general, but he'd earned his rank fighting battle after battle on the side of the Yank. And so on. They fought against the Cheyenne and the Pawnee and the Sioux, and he won, da-da-da, and there were hoofbeats and war whoops and all the rest. So when the older kids went to school, Fred got to play that a lot by himself and really enjoyed it. So one day, Fred had disappeared. I figured he was outside, which he was, and there was a big kazoo at the gate because my German Shepherd Peggy always made a big noise if somebody was coming, and I could see this woman coming. Well, the kids had just gotten off, and I was in a mess, and my hair was a mess, and my clothes were a mess, and everything was a mess. And I looked around the house was a mess. I thought, well, we got to get rid of this lady fast enough. And she didn't scare off from the dog, well, she just kept coming. And I was making some Jell-O and for supper, and I put fruit into the Jell-O, and then I just set the Jell-O down real quickly and went to answer the door. And I heard the crash behind me. There wasn't quite enough room. We had a big orange cat named Herbert. Anyway, the woman wanted to come in, and I thought maybe she was selling Avon or something, but no, she was going to come in. And then she said that she was from social services, and I thought, oh boy, this is the end. They're coming to take the kids, just like back in the Depression days when they went to kids from parents. So she came in and she looked around. Well, the big problem being that we didn't have TV and we didn't have plumbing. We did have a little electricity. She looked around, she saw the pitcher pump at the sink, and she said, you don't have plumbing? And I tried to distract her with some other things. And you don't have TV? No, we don't have a TV. But the kids read. We go to the library, they've got a lot of their own books, they read and read and read. So we finally got into the living room, and I had to run around her and take all this pile of books off the couch so she could sit down. Take a pile of books off the chair so I could sit down. Tried to converse. I was going to give her something to eat, but there wasn't anything at the moment. Roy had finished off the Oreos for breakfast, and Herbert, our big orange cat, was sitting by the red mess on the floor, stabbing grapes with his right claw and picking them up and eating the grapes. And she was looking around sort of austerely. And we talked about kids, and finally she said, don't you have another child? And I said, yes. Fred's around somewhere. He'll be going to school next year. And she said, well, I'd like to meet him. So I thought, all right. So we went outside. I went outside and found Fred, and he was building things. He had little Indians and little soldiers, and he built mounds of dirt, and he was doing all these things. So I finally got his attention and said, come on in, there's a lady who wants to talk to you. And finally he came in. Meantime, I was back inside and smiling brightly at this woman and waiting to see what would happen. I was afraid she'd figure, well, does he even speak English? Is he wearing clothes? I mean, just what kind of a deal is this? And sure enough, he came in and he stood in the doorway. He was dripping dirt. And he was wearing clothes. And she said, "Hello, little boy, and what is your name?" And he just stood there for a minute. And finally he came forward, stretched out his hand and said, "Howdy, ma'am. The name's Custah, General George